Critical thinking is hard. That's why a lot of people don't like to do it. It's easier for someone to just be satisfied with their beliefs. But no one should ever be satisfied with their beliefs. People who love learning and searching for the truth are constantly critically thinking about everything. Critical thinking is particularly important, however, because if you are an excellent critical thinker, you should be able to teach yourself how to do just about anything without the help of anyone else. You're not just building knowledge when you critically think. You're taking knowledge to a new direction that you've never been before, or perhaps no one else has ever been before. Critical thinking is hard, but the more you do it, every obstacle that life throws at you should become less and less of a big deal. Here's my guide to thinking critically. In order to know how to think critically, you must first understand what critical thinking means. It's ironic because you have to kind of critically think to come up with a definition of critical thinking. There are literally hundreds of different definitions of critical thinking out there, and many of them are quite complex. I have studied several of those definitions, and believe it or not, Wikipedia's definition was the most satisfying to me. A way of deciding whether a claim is always true, sometimes true, partly true, or false. However, because synthesizing is such an important part of critical thinking, I would add to that definition: creating new claims based on reason and evidence. So the complete definition of critical thinking is a way of deciding whether a claim is always true, sometimes true, partly true, or false. Creating new claims based on reason and evidence. So let's critically think about critical thinking. Did I just blow your mind? First of all, we need a claim. Can I get an example of a claim from the audience, please? Anyone? Oh yes, good, very good. Here is a claim for you. Football is the most popular sport in the United States. First of all, I already know what you're doing right now, but stop it. Just stop it, okay? Your bias has already crept in. You already have all these thoughts in your head about football and its popularity. Most of you think you know the answer already. This brings us to the first step of critical thinking: suspending judgment. Ignore all biases you have about football, popular sports, and the United States. Clear your head and attempt to be entirely objective about the claim. In other words, keep an open mind. Number 2, gather information about the claim. Before you gather evidence, you first need to establish criterion for what the claim actually means. For example, how does one define a sport's popularity? Is it based on how many people watch it on TV? Is it based on how many people attend the games? How about the number of kids that play the sport in Little League? What about the celebrity statuses of players playing professionally or in college? What brings in the most money? Everybody agrees what the United States is, but there still is some debate about what a sport is. Now you need to research facts that both support the claim and don't support the claim. How much evidence out there supports it? There are a lot of polls that support it. With a simple search on the web, far more results come up from credible sources that this is true. The Super Bowl is the most highly rated sporting event each year. However, the evidence is not overwhelmingly conclusive. For example, more people attend Major League Baseball games than the NFL, NHL, and NBA combined. Number 3, consider the credibility and biases of your evidence. How reliable are all of these places where you're getting the information? Most information you find in web searches can be traced back to one source. For example, when I googled "football is the most popular sport in the United States," nearly everything that appeared referenced a Harris Interactive poll conducted on the claim. Well, who is Harris Interactive? It turns out they're a respectable market research firm, and they seem credible based on their history of research on various topics. What about the poll? How accurate was the poll? It only asked a sample of Americans, 2,176 adults to be exact. How were these people chosen? How were they asked a question? Were the people who conducted the poll at Harris fans of football? Did they ignore their own biases? What about the data from ESPN that more people attend baseball games by far than NFL in a given year? Why would ESPN like baseball to be just as popular or more popular than football? Number 4, analyze and evaluate the evidence. Next, prioritize the evidence based on its credibility and its relevance. Some evidence may not be as relevant to the statement, and such evidence should be given less attention. Weigh the countering evidence against one another. Are there clearly more facts that support the claim, or are there clearly more facts that don't support the claim? You should throw out any evidence that doesn't go either way. Depending on how deep you want to go, this can be a tedious process, so look for patterns in the evidence. Often, you're going to come back to the same basic facts in a variety of sources, because frankly, most people are either too lazy or just don't have the resources to do their own research. So they'll often do what you're doing to get their information. Most people agree that the best forms of evidence are primary sources, which are first-hand accounts from people's experiences. Professional journals are also great sources, especially if they are peer-reviewed, meaning other experts in a related field are scrutinizing the articles in them. But no source is perfect, because every source comes from a human being, and human beings are not perfect, in case you haven't figured that out yet. Anyway, there are probably not a whole lot of peer-reviewed articles about the popularity of football in the United States, so I shouldn't focus too much on that. Just remember to make sure your evidence is from a wide variety of sources. Number 5. Construct a conclusion based on the evidence. It will be rare when all the evidence completely backs up a claim. Heck, even gravity is still just a theory. Most of the time, there are shades of gray when it comes to the truth, and we just have to accept that. Therefore, when you construct a conclusion based on the evidence, you'll usually be choosing between if a claim is sometimes true, partly true, or false. If you have gone through all the steps so far, you should feel very confident about your conclusion. So, is football indeed the most popular sport in the United States? Based on reason and evidence, I would say it is partly true. More specifically, mostly true. There is a lot of solid evidence supporting this claim. The Harris Polls has consistently tracked this to be true each year they have asked the question for the last 47 years. Other polls corroborate the Harris Polls, and statistics like video game sales, the amount of money spent on high school and college football, and the number of sellout professional football games all point to football being number 1 in the United States. However, there are some caveats to the claim. Baseball, basketball, soccer, and softball all have higher numbers of kids who play Little League. Also, more people attend Major League Baseball games than the NFL by far. I suppose if the claim were more people play football than any other sport in the United States, the results would have looked very different. Even if my conclusion isn't spot on, at least I went through the process to reach it, which is really what critical thinking is all about, the process. Critical thinking begins with our ability to ignore prejudice and suspend judgment, and it's never meant to be something that's instantaneous. We must take our time when critically thinking. Critical thinking has a higher purpose, usually to solve a problem. A lot of people are so good at doing it that they don't even realize they are doing it. Like anything, it takes much practice. It's a skill that has to be constantly exercised and refined. In making this video, I have spent a lot of time critically thinking about critically thinking, and one thing stood out as I was making this. If you are able to easily critically think, you can learn anything you want to. And with access to the internet, the possibilities are endless. You would technically never need another human being if you could effectively critically think. If you can think, then you can learn from a teacher. But if you can critically think, then you can teach yourself. Learn on.